So then the line of presentation will be, I will start introduction and I will mention about fundamental foundation, of course, about bioeconomy, but almost about everything. And then I will give you the definition and how the bioeconomy have been framing and conceptualizing in the world. And from there, we move to the driver strategy in Europe. Because why then we take Europe? Because Europe was the group of country that really seriously developed this bioeconomy. And actually was we as a person and institution with university in Holland was involved in the beginning of the development of bioeconomy. Then moved to the 5 principal and key drivers circular bioeconomy and industrial symbiosis. And I presented also the grand strategy of bioeconomy Indonesia just ahead before the bioeconomy developed in Europe. And I moved to more technical thing, process design for bioconversion, and the last one, opportunity. So maybe I will focus, I will present in some detail on this view of the title, but I will, especially in the last one, the 8th one, I will just move just to show you a kind of opportunity, very short presentation. All right. So why then, why circular bioeconomy now and why so important? So for the last 200 years, yeah, we have been experienced the fossil-based linear economy. And we see how the world has been transformed. But over the last 50 years, of course, we have seen a lot of development, but still, and I believe all of you, whether in Indonesia and other countries abroad, is still a significant, although significant reduction of both poverty and inequality in the rich poverty have been experienced, but still poverty and inequality are still an issue, even for developed countries. Next, we have to understand, especially for you, all the rising generation, the young generation, that we have to realize that we already use a full 1.5 the sustainable level of resources in our planet. Meaning, actually, our planet is suffering by now because they cannot support the living anymore. Okay. So since Industrial Revolution, the linear fossil-based economy had been the basis of almost economy. But what happened since then is the escalating resource use, global environmental degradation, and unprecedented human-induced climate impact. And I believe most of you understand nowadays what's the impact of global warming of today. So there is a 9 planetary boundary, yeah, that we mentioned, and 4 of them that have been crossed. It's a climate change, loss of biosphere integrity, land system change, and altered biochemical cycles. And this has become the focus of our discussion today. And among of that 4, climate change and biosphere integrity are core boundary that had been crossed. Okay, from this one, let's make it this data that had been expected, and the years of 2030, the world will need 50% of more food, 50% more energy, and 50% more fresh water, comparing to the one in 2010. So in a brief, you can say that one, that just to make it easy to remember, that in 2050, they predicted become 9 to 10 billion people. So there will be more rich access to the calorie, also access to diet based on meat. So we need to double our plant production by 2050 for food and feed to feed the world. And as I say that we start this one, before bioeconomic established in Europe. So then we call it that agriculture should also provide not just for food, but beyond of food. So in more detail, what then the basis of this one? The fossil supply are running out, 90% for energy, 50% product, increase of oil. Then the most important is care for global warming. So then the only way have to go to the bio-based economy. Please pay attention to this one, bio-based economy. Then we can talk later on about bioeconomy and circular bioeconomy. So before move to the more about bioeconomy, I would like to present this one, that the most prominent model of sustainability is this one, is economic growth, social development, and environmental sustainability. Why is important to mention this one? Because even in Europe, some expertise, scientists will be focused in one of the area. Someone will be focused on economic growth, someone will focus on social development. But when we call about sustainability, the three of this one should be developed together. And then I will, in the last one presentation about how I will mention about inclusive growth in this one. And I will present to you about bioeconomic. Actually, I've been in Indonesia for a long time, but I will focus about inclusivity. So what's the fundamental foundation for the bioeconomy? This quote I always teach to my student, and I hope a student from foreign also can learn from this one, that life must be regarded at the deepest level as a matter as much of energy transformation as of genetic replication. Some people, when they ask what is life, people will say life could be something that can move, something thinking than everything. But this is more in the deepest level, life is energy transformation. Having said this one, let's move to the more why then Indonesia should play important role in bioeconomy, because you can see this one, Indonesia is located in the tropic belt of the world and contains second greatest biodiversity on earth. So I've been work, of course, I'm in Indonesia, but have been work also with a friend in South America. But most importantly, I have deeply involved in Africa, and particularly in Sudan, because I believe this country that located in tropical belt should work together. So let's look briefly in more detail. As we know now, the solar energy, the sunshine, the source of life. And let's see about source of energy in the world. Just briefly, so then you have, so we can have, you have a data, yeah, that sunshine emitting about 4.2 by 10 power 2020 watts. Okay, I will move fast, just give you some idea so you don't have reference when you talk about solar energy. But you can see the one, only small fraction of the solar energy reach Earth surface is 10 power 17. Yeah, so it is 17, this is 22. So only small part of this one. At least also you should have also some idea if you like to calculate how much energy per square meter or per centimeter per certain time. This is the number, 5.4 joule per square centimeter and per minute. So it's good to have this kind of information so you have idea about calculating the possibility of the potential of energy in the surface of the Earth. Let's move that to the more detail. Then how we can harvest the solar energy? Of course, everybody knows we harvest it by photosynthesis. But I teach also my student when it called photosynthesis. Most of the time, most of the time, all students also know about this reaction. Yeah, CO2, waters, and so forth. But very few pay attention that photosynthesis also play important role in converting oxygen from one molecule to another. So I can see this one, the oxygen that we have here is coming from the waters, and the oxygen that attached to the CO2 then will be combined to the carbohydrate and so forth. Why this is important? It is really important that you know that the photosynthesis is not just producing the carbohydrate, glucose here, but also producing oxygen, also producing water in such a way that can purify, that the molecule can exchange one to another. And also the same, also then we can look at how we consume this energy. And why that is important, then you go back here. If you look at this one, this very basic principle, the nature will give you the synthesis of molecule, and when people consume it, you can see this one, how the molecule then degraded becomes CO2 and hydrogen. So this is one we call it the entropy negative, and this one entropy positive. I will back to this one in the next presentation. So then I will give you the video in the last of my presentation, and I've been focused on cassava. The reason is, if you look at this number, that cassava is one of the most efficient plant in harvesting sunlight. At the moment, of course, this is cassava in the start productivity. Yeah? So if you compare it to the cassava root, then nowadays we can reach more than 150 ton years. So then about 30%, then you can see easily that start can be produced about this amount. Based on this data, you can see that cassava can harvest solar energy with this ratio. Yeah. About 550, palm oil 190, and rice 100 megajoule per hectare per year. Then you can see how the cassava harvest solar energy about 15 by 5 compared to 5 and 3. All right. So from this data, actually about 1.5, just look at this one, 10 power 14 had been produced, had been harvesting by the solar energy through the photosynthesis. And if you look at the amount of energy that required by people in Earth is about 10 power 11, assuming the basal metabolic stand 70 kilocalorie per hour. Meaning from this one, only 0.5 energy provided by photosynthesis is required by the people. However, as you know, the energy that we need not just for a living as a human, but also many things we need for cooking, transportation, and lighting. And this one much higher than what we need for living. All right, then of course, as mentioned before, just now, in the beginning, so we have been relying on fossil fuels, 80%. And of course, we are going to see how to harnessing solar energy. But as just mentioned, energy is renewable, form is abundant, but designing and refining new method of converting it to meet our needs is a major engineering challenging. So this is the wide and important. In the next part of my presentation, we focus on designing and refining. Okay, then I will move this one. I will go faster. And so for me, I keep saying this one when you talk the fundamental sustainability, but from the point of natural, this is very important to be paid attention. That energy and mass flow through the ecosystem, that have to remember that the earth is a bioregenerative, that the plants, animal, and especially microorganisms regenerate, recycle, and control life necessity. And actually, this is the basic of my presentation and the way I see the sustainable bioeconomy. So we have to follow the way of natural symbiosis, where is producers, this is producers, consumer here, and the composers, some microorganisms here should live together that beneficial all parties. And this is also the basis of industrial symbiosis that have been passing at the present time, and I'm going to talk about that. So it is really important how to keep this natural symbiosis in our environment, because otherwise we are now experiencing all the problem in our environment. Right. So let me go a bit technical. What actually then, what is called biological principle and interaction is sustaining long term? So the translation of what we just learned, so it's a biological structure. So what is biological structures? This is the way in which organism, plant and animal that are purposely managed and for economic output are arranged with respect to each other and to other biota in their environment. The productivity, stability, and effect on the environment of an agricultural system are related to diversity. It is amount, it is type, and most importantly, organization, how it is structured. The whole back of presentation is depend on this one, how it is structured. So because agricultural systems are managed by the people, their structure is guided by an underlying human philosophy or view of the world. Yeah, it's really depend on the paradigm of the people, because it is the people who structures the agriculture. I think this is the basic, and I will move then the way of people, the paradigm of the people, look at of economy and also bioeconomy. So let's focus on this one. So the interrelatedness of all parts of a farming system, including the farmer and farm family, is very important to take care. So the importance of the many biological balance in the system, they need to maximize desired biological relationship in the system and to minimize use of material and practice. So it is to maximize the desire of biological relationship. So when we're taking part on this economy, we have to take care about this one, the desire of biological relationship. What is the desire of biological relationship? Let me put back is this one. It's a natural symbiosis. All right. So, okay, now, why that's so important to mention this one? I still experience in my lifetime during my childhood. I still remember most of agriculture didn't use fossil fertilizers. And since then, for the last 40 years, the fertilizer had been used. But what happened now, that diminishing return of fertilizer imply that further application may not. Just to give you some example, if you look at this one, this is number that you can use, that you can learn, but I still personally remember, yeah, before 60, 65, I remember, there is no utilization of fossil fertilizers in most of the parts of Indonesia. And at that time, yes, indeed, the productivity of the land is only about 2 or 3 tons per hectare. And in 70, with introduction of fossil fertilizers, when Indonesia owned fertilizers, there is increase from 3 to 5. But since then, You can see that. But at the time, they use about all NPK 100 kilogram per hectares, and nowadays some places already use 700, even 1,000 kilogram NPK per hectares, but the productivity almost the same, yeah, only about 5 to 6 ton per hectares. So there is no much improvement. So this is what I'm trying to say. The important is how to maximize the disabled relationship. All right, let's move to the what is then the bioeconomy. I will just pick up a few of the presentation and you can read yourself. But let's see first, this is important for you because there is a lot of terminology that related to this bioeconomy. So what we call sorry. So what you call green economy is all of this one. And what is bioeconomy is this one. And bio-based economy is this one. It's a part of this one. And circular economy is combination of the two. And I will focus on the two, the three in the next slide. Okay, this is good for you to understand. When somebody wants to say about the green economy, bio-based economy, and circular economy, and later on circular bioeconomy. So, by definition, bio-based economy is use of renewable greenhouses, resources, and then come to the bio-based economy. Somebody else, yeah, as I mentioned, this a new thing, and people can, as the title of the presentation, how then people defining and framing and conceptualizing bioeconomy. And then it can be, if you follow the definition, that you can see something development in even in definition. I make this note, not the multifaceted critique on the industrialization of nature due to bio-based input in various production processes. Most of recently published paper criticize the industrial perspective that neglect especially the role of farmer and the technology focus. But then, as they mentioned here, sometimes we exclude the partition of the farmers and only focus technology focus. And you can see from this definition, then people then the pillars for by building the bio-based economy. If you look at this one, is microbial production, enzyme technology, and bio-based concept, green chemistry, and this one. And this is my comment. Then recently published paper criticized that the later understanding tend to be accompanied by an industrial policy center vision. So this is a center vision for economic growth, which emphasizes the bioeconomic contribution to innovate, but fail to comprehensively address concern about sustainability and development. All right. So by having this definition, now that I have to sustainable bioeconomy,
Sorry, Pak Robert, we couldn't hear your voice. All right, participants, please bear with us. We have these technical difficulties. We are still waiting for Robert to come back and so that we can hear his voice. Sorry to interrupt you, Robert, but can you hear me?
No, we can hear you, but we cannot hear I cannot hear the professor.
Robert, we cannot hear your voice yet. Perhaps you may check your. You
Also,
are.
can you please ask him for his presentation because we have exam tomorrow.
Yeah, we already have the presentation. The committee, please share the slides to the participants.
Yes, please.
Okay, please wait for a while for Professor Robert to settle these technical issues. In the meantime, perhaps a committee can upload the files here in the Zoom chat. You can also access all the files in the Google Drive and in the EduNext.
Can you hear me?
Yes, okay, now you're back. Okay.
Sorry,
Good.
something wrong.
You may proceed, Robert.
Okay, now so I just mentioning about how this bioeconomy have been defined and framing, and I just go to this that about sustainable bioeconomy and circular economy. And can you read this small? Then make much easier for me, Abdul.
Can you slideshow? Is it possible?
Sure. Okay.
All right, now it's clear.
All right. So let's see why this kind of definition is different. Because of then, if you look at developed countries like Europe and Netherlands, and developed country like Indonesia, of course, they have different focusing. Some big country focusing on technology, high added value, but for us actually focus on the primary processing and focus on by product commodity. Of course, should be fits to the policy of each country, but why then definition is different because of the focus of different country. So I like to state it this one. Yeah, both for Indonesian but also abroad. At this time, if you look at all this publication, newspaper, television, they only focus on circular economy. The reason why, because it's circular economy is backed by the big company. But I like to state very clearly that bioeconomy is beyond circular economy. So bioeconomy go beyond objective of circular economy. It's very thing, and then and if you look at the bioeconomy taking care of the environment and taking care of the as you mentioned, the cycle of natural symbiosis, and that's why we call it a circular bioeconomy. So it's important, very different when you call it circular economy and circular bioeconomy, because bioeconomy is much broader and much more important, in my opinion, than just circular economy. To understand this one, let's move then. What do you call it? But then what is a circular economy? Is what should be done, circular economy, how it can be done through the bioeconomy. That make easier to understand. That we call it the circular bioeconomy. Yeah, so you cannot conduct the sustainable economy just by using circular economy. Yeah, you have to do it.
Please, Prof, sorry, can you please explain this a bit further? I can't understand. Circular bio.
Yes, I will move to the next slide to make it easier to understand why this thing is important. By seeing this one, I just mentioned that we have to see technical and biological cycle. And I will move to this one, then can easy to understand. let me just move into this one. So when at the moment, most of the circular economy, I'm talking about circular economy, only focus in this one. Like plastic, use it, you recycle it, just focus this one. But remember, if you only focus this one, the world will never be sustained, because for doing this plastic recycle, you need energy. For example, but now, if someone recycle the plastic, but they use huge of fossil fuel to recycle this one, actually you are not making better, make it worse, because bringing plastic one places to another places by consuming huge of fossil fuel, it doesn't make any sense. So that's the reason we have to consider to combine the biosphere, that we need energy to process this one, we need water to make this to recycling this one, and of course we need the food. So just making this just mentioning about the circular economy, as I just mentioned just now, so it's more important and more powerful, would say, the bioeconomy just circular economy. All right. So I think how to make it much easier to understand this one. This is this paper from Gamberto make very easier. If you only focus on circular economy, then you can see this one. Circular economy is entropy positive plus, meaning you ruin the environment. The only thing to make entropy negative is the biosphere. So you have to combine the two to make the entropy as slow as possible, and the best one to make the entropy zero. I think just this is very important and very easy to understand. Circular economy most of the time without bioeconomy will be produce entropy positive. I hope you answer your question. Okay, and then let's focus then. So how to understand more easily when you talk about circular economy just in technosphere, that's meaning that this one, yeah, is entropy positive. So it's very easy to see to make sustainable economy, sustain bioeconomy, sustain economy, that meaning by circular economy, that we have to include it then biosphere, because by having the input from here, and then to take care how the things, the waste from this one also can be sustained by nature, the only way to make a sustainable economy. And in this case, then we call it circular bioeconomy. All right. So I will, because I have some quite bit presentation, and I like to deliver it for you. Then we can back here if you have question later on. So then, having said this one, so what's the driver and strategy of the European bioeconomy? I again repeated why I refer to European, because European is the country, a couple of countries that really serious in developed bioeconomy in the world. So of course we know that what's drive economy development, human capital, and so forth. You know this one, but we'll like focus what's the drive of the bioeconomy. Of course, it's biosupply, biorefinery, farmers, and I can move, and need of the from the land change, climate change, of course, improve our frame condition. And another important to mention how European strategy to cope with this bioeconomy. Now with the word of circular economy now already sustainable and circular. This is a very important word. So it's sustainable bioeconomy, or we call it circular bioeconomy. That the key for this one is sustainability and circularity. And then why they're so important? Now they have some calculation. I think I just show you that we can, of course, can calculate it to each country. Yeah. Yes, natural sustainability again is important. And in the European case, they already calculate it will be 2.3 trillion that can be having from this bioeconomy. And of course, there is another strategy they have, that so many things, climate objective and modernization of this one. For example, turning bio waste, but of course important also healthy ecosystem. But to do so, what they have to do, yeah, to more innovative, resource efficient and competitive society. And it's important also to mention now reducing dependency of non-renewable domestically and from abroad. And then how will they do that? Because strengthen and scale up the bio-based sectors, unlock investment and market. And let me focus to this one before I move. So I just have friends who own the coal in Indonesia. Of course, they are so rich, but I remind them, why don't you invest some of your profit, yeah, to unlock investment to kind of just to replanting the soil from coal, then it can enjoy byproduct for another 100 years. Deploy local bioeconomy rapidly across sector, understand the ecological boundary of the economy. As just mentioned, cross-sectional assessment before. Okay, so just so then you can have idea about the strategy of European in developed bioeconomy, you can see this this figure. I think it's very easy to understand, how do they do that. So having said this one, now then we can see what is the principle and key driver for circular bioeconomy and industrial symbiosis. I put this one, industrial symbiosis, I just mentioned just now, that for me is natural symbiosis is very important to keep the sustainability, and how can imitate the natural symbiosis. This is through this industrial symbiosis. So what is the principle for circular bioeconomy? So having said that circular bioeconomy is a kind of sustainable bioeconomy, is to minimize the depletion of resources. I just mentioned, if someone says circular economy just by recycling plastic, but then to do so, they consume huge of fossil, it doesn't mean anything for sustainable economy. So it's important to understand this one. And how to do that? This is a safeguard. So this is very important. I fully agree with one, this healthy ecosystem to avoid the use and production of non-essential bio-based product, to prioritize, so natural resources need to be used effectively, recycle of byproduct. For example, I will focus on this one later, how the byproduct of agriculture should be utilized for other use of, I call it industrial symbiotic. Of course, first, how to use the byproduct from agriculture as a feed for cattle. And also already say the entropy. So we'll have to remember this one. All this technical cycle is entropy positive. So we have to make it, how to make it as slow as possible. And this is the kind of this one. So important also to see how the flow of this biomass. I keep saying this one, so you have a different way of presenting this biomass flow. I will show the way I present it, but it's also nice to see how somebody else to do that. So this is another way of people, how the driver for circular bioeconomy is policy, of course, technology, organization, social behavior, and so forth. I will comment this one later. And somebody have to remember, once you drive the bioeconomy, circular bioeconomy, so within the bioeconomy itself, there is also driving force, technology and innovation, market organization, and so forth. So this relation within the bioeconomy is important to see in this framework. And because of the sort of time, please have a look this one, then we can understand what you talk about sustainable bioeconomy. So I just mentioned that for me, how we can implement it, the bioeconomy. In my opinion, it's important to start it with industrial symbiosis. It's the process by which waste or byproduct of an industry or industrial process become the raw material for other. It's important because many at the moment, many industry and many waste actually is available out there, but no one utilize it. So it's important how we can establish the system that it can utilize. We should not say the waste, we should say byproduct in more natural. So for me, and this is presentation we prepared with friend from Groningen, Eric and others. Maybe you heard this presentation already. It's in 2005. So for me, when you talk about circular bioeconomy, and also to reply the question, this is actually the one we like to propose. So how to integrate it, the cultivation of biomass production, both, yeah, for this one, for humans, necessary for food, and then recycle the waste such a way, then all the minerals should be put back here. But of course, some part of this one, this byproduct of the agriculture, should be utilized to produce material, chemistry, pharma, and support. But still, the byproduct of this process should be utilized such a way then the mineral, the nutrient should be put back to the nature. So where is the place for this industrial symbiosis in this one? So we need to develop the symbiosis industry in this area. I will show you how we are doing it for small scale. So this is the principle of circular bioeconomy, in my opinion, and this is one we provided some time ago, and this is one, of course, we implemented here in Indonesia, not just theoretically. Okay, let me, having said all things, let me say that how the bioeconomy in the grand strategy of Indonesia agriculture. So luckily, I'm involved in preparing this one in Indonesia. So we have a big group. This one was ministers and all the scientists, but actually only a few people who really prepared this one. And I mean, they're all supporting us, but I and a friend here, the four of us really prepared this one, because for me, it's very good experience involved this one. So I hope a student also may starting also to make this kind of I mean, exercise, you know, for small scale, for the village or forever. But this is when you make it you make kind of grand strategy for agricultural development as a basis towards a sustainable bioeconomy. Let me see what we just briefly, I think you can read. Of course, we just mentioned the same thing, challenging and the consequences. And then, but we focus on by saying that develop at the level of national should be there a policy. The paradigm of agriculture for development is important to mention. So agriculture should be basis for development, because then why the agriculture? Because it's the agriculture who produce the biomass. But of course, the government should pay attention for the development of agriculture. Of course, there is development of at the level of agriculture. So let me tell you that of course it's the government. This is the government have to do with this one, with the laws of many things. But I myself say development at the level of agriculture. So I myself develop in this one, heavily involved in this one, heavily in the development of sustainable agriculture by industrial system. Because again, the national level is not always easy, But in this level, we can do even yourself with the farmers. So I will mention about this one, the development of bioeconomy at the level of agriculture. How we are going to do that? I will tell you later. Of course, there's objective you are mentioning. Please have a look. This is principle, and we write down the basic principle, especially in developing country, is a good governance, good policy and program, and so forth. But as I just say, it's not easy actually to develop this one in the national level, but you can always start in the agriculture sectors, because when you talk in the national level, we have to face how to start this one. It's not easy to have a good governance, a good policy, and so forth. And then again, this we mentioned also prerequisites, politics for development, decision making, and so forth. So of course, our vision at the time for Indonesia is to realize sustainable agriculture by industrial system. This is our focus. How to create agriculture by an industry system, which produce various healthy food, high added value product from tropical and natural resources. It's not easy to write it down. I still remember it take us for almost two days and 2 nights to make this definition, because so many different way of thinking of many scientists here in Indonesia. But in the end, we agree about this one. What's the mission? This one, but I will show you our target at the time. That it's important to mention this one. If we implemented this program, we can reach the income of the farmers 2,500 in 2040, and most important, then we can reduce from on farm about 39 to 179, but then we can increase off farm from 6 to 12. Right, and this is the roadmap we are thinking to do so. But again, as I mentioned, it's not always easy to create a policy. And therefore, let me give you some how then we follow up this program. Let me share with you the process design for biomass conversion and process integration. This is very technical. This is the material for our student. That of course we know the technology for conversion. There is thermochemical, there is biochemical. Let me explain to you. This is my PhD research in long time ago, yeah, in the 70s. But based on my research, then I can make at the time rural electrification, and later on even industries based on this one. So it's very important for you, student, wherever you are, to start something small. And when you're still young, and from that on, you can learn a lot, and of course you can make mistake, but you learn from your mistake. And from that, you can develop later on how to make so many things from the biomass. And then, of course, then you can try then how to combine process from thermo. You can see this one, as I saw you, this is thermochemical, biochemical conversion. By having the two, you can combine. And then instead of focusing on so many chemical, actually there is already a guideline that if you just focus for the for this 12 sugar defined by chemical, you can produce any chemical that exists nowadays that originally from fossil. So just focus from this 12. So that's the reason then, I think you have been follow the presentation of Professor Eric from Groningen. So we have the program for Indonesian to have this program, how to platform for biorefinery at the time. So you produce a PhD, included Pak Abdu here, Dr. Abdu from Groningen in this program. So let me explain briefly importance of process design. This is from the book, textbook. All my students, the last years of the bachelor will follow this courses. We call it process design. So what's actually the main of process design is process integration. Well, as I just mentioned, Policy could be complicated. Governance also could be complicated, but I like this one. Of course, vision without action is merely a dream. Action without vision just passes the time. Vision with action can change the world. I hope all of you can learn this one. And how to realize this one? So, as I mentioned, in 2005, I used to be in chemical engineering, was teaching there, and moved to biological at the time. At the time, the biological engineering is not exist yet. For me, it's very important, this definition. So at the time, a bit confused as engineer, then join sciences. But later on, by having this one, this is for science. If you want to understand function, study structure. But then having know this one, then I try to figure out why I have difficulty communication about science and engineering. But then I say to myself, if you want to create function, design structures, so different. But by knowing this one, that's how we can collaborate with others. That's so this is engineering. This is my quote after this one. So actually, what engineering should do is to create function. How to create science function by design structure. In this case, of course, we design the structure of the process. So let me move to this one. So in the old time, only people know what, but these days important also to have the social dimension of design. Why and who. And this is very important. As we should say, the more fundamental of the sustainability, so we have to take of this one. So then it's not just how and what, it's important also why and who. Having said this one, let me move very fast. So actually, when you talk about processing, about bioeconomy, and then we just focusing on the industrial, is actually how we can convert raw material to become product. But to do so, actually, in the process, there is so many process unit operation here to convert raw material to the desired product. But there are so many, but actually you can learn actually a process operation here. You can differentiate it easily. Actually, only three. There is so many, but the most important is chemical reaction, separation of chemical mixtures, mixing and splitting of stream or batches. I will show you after the presentation how the biggest starch industry here in Indonesia, actually they only use this one, separation and mixing, that's all. That's a little bit with temperature. So by knowing what is the main process is just chemical reaction, separation of chemical mixtures, mixes and splitting of stream, then we can know how to integrate this one. To make it easy, as I just mentioned, then there is a chemical mixing, but it's very important, the integration of tasks. I myself focus my specialization of my work in this integration. So let me read it very clearly. So what kind of, then when you talk about making industry, what actually you are doing? You're doing is process synthesis. What is process synthesis? How to integrate it many kind of processing operation. And let me read to you, one of the greatest challenges in the process design involve the synthesis of configuration that produce chemical in a reliable, safe, and economical manner and a high yield with little or no waste. So it's a simple principle, but then how we are going to do that to reach this point? Reliable, safe, economic matters. Then we call it synthesis of configuration. That we call process synthesis. Repeat it again. So how to create industry actually is a process synthesis. What you are doing in the process synthesis is how many kind of process operation are configured in flow sheet. So in the last presentation, I will show you a lot of flow sheet just so you can learn from that one. So this kind of flows, then we can have to make this innovation map, how to integrate this one. You can read in the book. Yeah. But let me show you that what we are doing. I see I only have about 5 minutes to 10 minutes left. So what we are doing, just for example, how this is as I mentioned to you, we are focused on the cassava, but then from the cassava we are producing of this ethanol. But also I'm doing now how to integrate it, the knowledge of the genetic modification, so that we, instead of producing ethanol, we can produce isobutanol. But look at this one. We are the first one in Indonesia how to utilize the waste to produce this black soldier fly. And then we can utilize this one. So what's the waste of this one we can use from other thing, while also improving the process here. Okay, having said this one, let me show you a very simple thing that you can do also yourself in your area, in your country. Opportunity and challenging for building a circular bioeconomy in Indonesia and elsewhere. Let me show you this. I like this one. No policy, no matter how ingenious, has any chance of success if it is born in the mind of a few and carried in the heart of none. So I myself focus my attention how to bring this knowledge to the heart of the people in the rural area. All right. So then, what is then important step to do so? This is integration of plant cultivation and biomass. And to do so, I will not read this one, but I like just to inform you, when you talk about cultivation, of course, we like to harvest primarily the metabolite, carbohydrate, lipid, protein. But remember, the largest fraction of this cultivation is lignocellulose that most of the time considered as a waste. So it's important to pay attention to this one. And I say that one, so important also to create in natural symbiosis, producer, consumer, and the composer, we can imitate that one in industries by having the function of the tree. Of course, you follow the cascading. So the cascading is meaning that how we can prioritizing the product can produce. Of course, we start from functional food, fine chemical, and so forth. It's important to mention that producing biofuel from biomass should be the last option, because fuel is the lowest added value that we can get from biomass. So then we'll not it's something, it's important, of course, to pay attention to the yield productivity. But let me share with you what we are doing, and we published already this one. This is here in Bandung, that this is the citronella. We utilize citronella, we take the oil, but as we know, the citronella oil only 2.5%. There is 97% biomass that can utilize for the cattle. Of course, we improve the biomass waste from this one by two things, by fermentation, another thing, but also by utilizing the protein from other ways. So you can read this one, that by doing so, we can increase the productivity of the milk of the cassava. But the most important, there is no waste here, but also, I just mentioned here, by doing so, we can reduce this one. The use of synthetic fertilizer for citronella cultivation can be reduced up to 80%, and with increased productivity up to 20%. So that's very important, especially nowadays. As you know, that the price of fertilizers goes up more than 100%. Usually NPK only 10,000, nowadays 20,000. So very important for the farmer, how we can reduce the use of the fossil fertilizers by just recycling this one. So we just make up fertilizer here. So from this experiment, we conducted this one, and this is an example of bioeconomy in very small scale, of course. But from this one, then we learn a lot of things about the the bioeconomy. So it's very important nutrient recycle, provide benefit, reduce external input, and from that job. Okay, there is of course different different scheme that you can utilize. Also the black soldier fly that can export this one, make compost, but again the same mission. We already try also this kind of thing from the area of in the Papua, also Kalimantan, but to make more brothers, you can put also propolis, honey pollen by utilizing the red fruit in Papua to produce this one. Yeah, but far away, so I couldn't check how it's going over there. But let me, what is challenging there? So we are not talking small scale, but let me explain to here. Whatever I presented, when I presented this bioeconomy, I mean, almost 8 years ago, 10 years ago in Paris, OECD, always people ask me, Robert, is really this bioeconomy benefit for Indonesia? Of course, I said, because for Indonesia, bioeconomy is not a new thing. If you look at this, all the richest people in Indonesia, actually, they do their profit from bio. If you look at all these gentlemen. But unfortunately, all these rich people own, own how many percent? We call it 0.2% richest people own 52% of plantation property. This is the challenging. Very ironic. The richest people in Indonesia come from doing cultivation, but on the other side, the poor people in Indonesia also come from the farmers. So this big question, what's happened with that? I think this is challenging, and this is one of the challenges that I mentioned. So what my proposal is that this is a big guy, big people, this country processing. We should try to develop primary processing in the field, like the one I mentioned to you. So we could make many kind of product that can big company can processing this one because they export it outside. And I will give you other option, of course, so many things here. And then any other option we can develop from rice, other thing. But also I'd like to share you also my experience, how I love this cassava. So I've been working in Sudan at the time. And then at the time you can see all this in Sudan, how we can desert in Sudan, and then by doing step by step, then actually there is a water, I can use solar cell, and then we start to rehabilitate using alfalfa. Then I using this alfalfa as compost to this cassava, and we can produce, that at this time we can produce quite large, 150 tons per hectare. So if we can rehabilitate the land in the desert of Africa, there is no problem for food in the world. I presented this one in Paris, and I say that why you focus to other food? Why don't you use cassava? Because with cassava, we can solve the problem of the carbohydrate, and from the leaf, you can have protein. So the two is enough for people. And of course, in Indonesia, I will show you later that we know the conventional one and how it will improve this one. So we can improve the stock production here in Indonesia. And then, of course, this is my few large, my slide. But also I focus, one of my students nowadays focus on reforestation and land restoration of sodic saline soil. Because of global warming, now it's a lot of beach in Indonesia becomes sodic saline, and now we learn how to cope with this one, like this one in Kalimantan. So promoting intercropping, polycultures, implementing this one. So we learn about this one. So you will see some people in Indonesia still ruin the forest, but I myself propose, why don't we improve to restore all this sodic saline soil, but also like the one also in Africa, so then we can grow like this cassava. All right, so of course there is microalgae. It's also very important. I think you are going to hear presentation from Professor Rene Weifel from Wageningen. So then based of the experience I just talking now, then I make also conceptual design. So my purpose to present it to you, if you start from small thing, that it will have a lot of idea, make bigger thing, but start from small, make it happen, and then you see the problem there. Based of this one, then you can have conceptual design. Like this one, this is my son, long time ago, we produced it, now he's in ITB already. And then we know so many, you have to learn so many options there. Of course, we have all this palm, but let me explain here, just focus on this palm. As I mentioned to you, there is starch, lipid, secondary. But of course, why I focus to this, I already mentioned, John, to this, the problem with the lipid, for example, like in the large palm plantation, have practiced the integration of biomass production with biomass corporation and are also heading toward world bioeconomic hub. But the problem with this one, however, abundance of biomass waste from oil palm plantation has not been utilized from kernel, for example, palm kernel. Let me focus on palm kernel. Indonesia export palm kernel. I already mentioned many times. If palm kernel utilized here in Indonesia as animal feed in industry, then we don't need to import the cattle from abroad. And then we can create also business from a small scale company. But of course, there is other thing like pyrolysis, like maybe you heard from Professor Eric, by converting all this biomass from the pyrolysis, then you can export it because then the minerals stay here in the country. All right, so you can see this one. I will not going, of course, the last one I say, but the microalgae is very important because they have everything there. But let me, because of the sake of time, it's a closing note. The question, the title of this one, maybe you didn't pay attention to this one, is this one. What is the pillar for building circular economy in Indonesia and maybe other country in tropical area? For me, is sustainability of the resource base, which require healthy aquatic, arable grassland and forest ecosystem. This is the pillar. Forget about why I criticize. Oh, sorry, let me back to this one. For actually, for Indonesia, bioeconomy is new. All these richest people, when they talk rich people, they are really rich. But the problem is, some of them already ruined the forest. And for me, yes, they're successful in developing the bioeconomy, contribution to the country, but it's very dangerous. It's not sustainable because they didn't keep the healthy ecosystem. Secondly, is that the sustainability of both production, this product of biomass, meaning this we have to keep the sustainability of cultivation, but also consumption, meaning the consumption those use the biomass, both processing and product. The processing in cultivation and the product from cultivation, but also processing and product from consumption. But the last but not least is a circular process of material. Focus on improving the productivity of biomass production and establishing the inclusive industrial symbiosis. Yes, I have to remind it, talk it very freely. Nowadays, a lot of tension about plantation and people surrounding because the owner of plantation is so rich, but people surround so poor. But it's very dangerous. It's not a good situation, because people, right? So to do so, that what is the key drivers? Of course, then by saying that the pillar is resource availability. We talk about Indonesia, agriculture for development, inclusive and sustainable agriculture that I mentioned is symbiosis bioindustrial system. Of course, we need technology and innovation. And the last one is a market organization. I'm also involved heavily also in this one, as I just mentioned, how to reduce cost of production in cultivation and how to help them in marketing their product. Okay, thank you by saying so. So this is ultimately the futures of natural ecosystem depend not on protecting from humans, but on its relationship with the people who inhabit it or share the landscape with it. Thank you. That at least for our friends, our students from foreigners, we learn on Indonesia. Terima kasih. Thank you.